The man memed as unstoppable. The action hero who could roundhouse kick a hurricane woke up one day to a fight he couldn't win with fists. And that's exactly where this story starts. At the moment the legend everyone thinks is unbreakable realizes real life hits harder than any stunt ever could. If you grew up hearing the jokes, you know the name. Chuck Norris, the guy who made bad guys rethink their life choices, didn't come from a safe, happy place. He came from a house where the floorboards creaked with worry and bedtime meant waiting for the storm to pass. Before the world ever knew Chuck Norris, there was a small, quiet kid named Carlos Ray Norris, born in 1940 in Ryan, Oklahoma, in a family already limping through hard times. His dad, Ray Norris, went off to World War II, and for a terrifying stretch, the only news that came home was a telegram saying he was missing in action. He made it back, alive but changed, and the bottle became his shield against what he'd seen. When the bottle took over, kindness slipped away. Those nights were loud and they were long. Chuck would later write in his memoir that his father became a negative example, someone he refused to imitate. It wasn't a kid's childhood, it was survival training. The anchor through all of it was his mother, Wieland Norris, who stretched a few dollars as if they were weeks of groceries, who hid a precious bill in a cupboard only to watch it vanish when Ray stumbled home. Even small sounds, the faucet, a door, could trip a fuse. There were nights when the family got shoved into a car for a wild, trembling drive nobody asked for. Imagine that. Your refuge is the danger. That mess digs roots into you. It teaches you to go quiet, to study every mood, to freeze or run. Chuck was shy, withdrawn, head down at school. And yet, in the dark, there was a flicker. Those Saturday matinees, the cowboys who rode straight and true. He couldn't always afford a ticket, but when he did, it was oxygen. The heroes on that screen were everything his house wasn't: steady, brave, safe. Then came the snap. At 14, seeing his mother cornered again, Chuck grabbed a hammer and stood between his parents. Picture the shaking hands, the pounding heart, the boy who hated violence finally saying, "No more." That moment didn't end the chaos, but it carved a vow into him. I will never become the man who scares the people I love. 2 years later, Wilma took the boys and ran to California. New place, same determination. Build a life that isn't a minefield. Now, the quiet kid needed a path, discipline, something with rules that didn't shift by the drink. In 1958, Chuck joined the U.S. Air Force and found himself stationed in South Korea. That's where he stumbled into the world that would change everything: martial arts, taekwondo, judo. The first classes were humbling. Lots of falling, lots of failing, but failing wasn't new to him. What was new was the promise that if you showed up, practiced, and respected the process, you got better. No guessing someone else's mood, no walking on eggshells, just sweat, repetition, progress. I was a shy kid, he'd later admit, but this gave me an identity. For the first time, the mirror didn't show a scared boy. It showed a student Dan becoming a fighter. He got out of the service in 1962, lugging home a stubborn dream. He worked as a military police officer, then risked it all to open a tiny karate school. Empty mats, slow days, bills piling up. You can almost hear the echo of his footsteps as he swept the floor and waited for students who never came. That can crush a person. He didn't let it. He entered tournaments. At first, it was loss after loss, painful, bruising, humiliating, but a defeat only sticks if you stop showing up. Between 1964 and 1967, he trained like a man building a new spine, kick by kick, stance by stance, until the body began to mirror the mindset, steady, grounded, precise. Then the tide turned. In 1967, he grabbed his first major championship. After that came a run on the karate circuit that looked less like luck and more like a blueprint for discipline. In time, he held the professional middleweight title for years, a lesson to anyone who thinks talent is the whole game. While he built multiple schools across the country, he didn't just teach kicks and punches. He taught self-respect. He taught that losing isn't identity, it's feedback. It was the gospel of effort. Show up today and show up tomorrow, too. But let's talk about the explosion. The moment the quiet force walked into the bright lights and the world saw what was simmering. In 1972, Chuck Norris stepped onto a film set in Rome's Colosseum and faced Bruce Lee in that iconic showdown from The Way of the Dragon, two different galaxies colliding. Bruce Lee, fluid and coiled like a spring. Chuck, precise and relentless. On screen, Chuck lost. Off screen, he won something bigger: your memory, Intensity, presence, that carved-in stone stillness that made you think, I do not want to be on the other side of those fists. Hollywood noticed, but Hollywood is a high wall with a greased rope, and the late 70s were thick with juggernauts named Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Chuck had to grind up the side of the mountain. He did. The break came with Good Guys Wear Black in 1978. It was like America looked up and said, yeah, that's the guy. From there, The Octagon, 1980. Lone Wolf McQuade in 1983. Missing in Action, 1984. Code of Silence, 1985. The Delta Force, 1986. A run of roles that stamped him as the plain-spoken man of action, the fair sheriff, the relentless soldier, the one who doesn't rattle when the room does. He wasn't just a martial artist anymore, he was a marker for justice in a decade obsessed with strength. But here's the truth, most of us didn't see behind the posters. Every time Chuck put on the uniform on screen, the weight of a real uniform pressed on his heart. His younger brother, Wieland Norris, the bright spirit who lit up rooms at home, went to Vietnam. In 1970, at just 21, Wieland walked point on a patrol, spotted an ambush, shouted the warning, and absorbed the cost with his life. That's a kind of courage that doesn't need a soundtrack. When the telegram came, it split the family's world. Wilma had already weathered poverty and violence. Now she had to bury a son. Chuck would later say, his death left a hole in my heart that will never heal. You get why the battlefield scenes in his films felt different. He wasn't just acting, he was visiting a grave. Let's rewind the personal life. You'll see how much pressure was pushing from every direction. In 1958, the same year he enlisted, Chuck married his high school sweetheart, Diane Holechek. They raised two boys, Mike Norris, born 1962, and Eric Norris, born 1965. He chased championships, then sets, then stardom, which meant long shoots, injuries from doing his own stunts, and months away from home. In 1988, after 30 years, the marriage ended. That kind of loss is different from any punch. It's the quiet collapse of your everyday. As if that weren't enough, a letter arrived from a woman named Dina, born in 1962, who told him she was his daughter from a relationship years earlier. Her mother had kept the truth to avoid detonating his marriage. When Chuck looked at her face, he saw his own features looking back. There's no choreographing your way through that kind of grief and guilt. He reached out, he asked forgiveness, and he built a relationship. But he also carried the ache of missed birthdays and school plays he never knew about. Strength isn't just power. Sometimes it's owning the mess and choosing to love forward anyway. Even friendships weren't spared by life's curveballs. In the late 80s, Chuck became close with Lee Atwater, a brilliant political strategist whose energy felt like a permanent sunrise. Then in March 1990, Lee collapsed mid-speech. Doctors found a brain tumor that couldn't be cut away. Chuck visited his friend and watched the light dim too fast. In March 1991, Lee Atwater died at 40. It shook Chuck. The reminder that fame, charisma, toughness, none of it puts a fence around time. If it can happen to him, it can happen to me. That realization has a way of stripping your illusions down to bare wood. Now, cue the chapter that welded the legend to the living room. In 1993, Chuck put on the hat of Cordell Walker and became the heartbeat of a series that ran for 8 seasons. Walker, Texas Ranger, turned into a ritual. Families sat down and there he was, the steady moral compass who could handle a brawl and a hard choice with the same calm. It aired in more than 100 countries. You could travel halfway around the world and find Chuck Norris solving problems with a look, a word, or, if necessary, a boot. The parody started, and here's the fun twist. The jokes only made the legend bigger. When the culture turns you into a meme and it feels like respect, you've slipped into a rare club. But remember the first line of this video. The fight you can't win with fists? That one walked straight into Chuck's home. After his 1988 divorce, he met Gena O'Kelley, a former model with a quiet strength that matched his. They married in 1998. In 2001, they welcomed twins, Dakota Norris and Danilee Kelly Norris, and for more than a decade, the home life looked like a second chance at peace. Kids' laughter, horses outside, new traditions taking root. Then came a hospital visit that should have been routine. In 2013, Gena underwent an MRI that used a gadolinium-based contrast agent. Afterward, her body revolted, tremors, numbness, weakness. Even her voice faded. It was like watching the floor drop out from under someone you love while you're standing there, helpless. What do you do when the world only knows you as invincible, but the person you love is withering in front of you? You drop everything. That's what Chuck did. He stepped back from work, from appearances, from the thing that made him a household name, and he sat with Gena. Hospitals, treatments, new doctors, more tests, trips that crossed oceans chasing a sliver of hope. You'd think fame fixes things. It doesn't. It gives you access, maybe, but it cannot hand your wife back her voice. He once said it felt like she was dying in front of him. That's not a line for effect. That's a husband telling the truth. For the twins, it rewrote childhood. Memories of mom in a hospital gown, of dad learning that the strongest thing he could do was hold a hand and refuse to leave. People love to say, real heroes don't wear capes. It's a cliche until you see what it actually looks like. A man known for fighting on camera, deciding his greatest battle is quietly sitting beside someone who hurts day after day, with patience as his only weapon. Chuck turned the discipline he learned in the dojo into a different kind of toughness, advocating, researching, showing up, praying, repeating. Gena stabilized, but the scars remained. So did the vigilance. Love became the mission statement, stay. Even when staying doesn't fix anything except the loneliness. Outside those walls, life kept evolving. The ranch in Texas offered wide skies and still water, the kind of quiet that feels like balm after decades of noise. There were business ventures, a bottled water company sourced from the ranch's spring, among other projects, and the wealth that comes with a long career. People guess numbers, sure, it's a lot. But you can't buy back time with money. You can't purchase 25-year-old knees. You can't write a check and retrieve a brother from a war 55 years ago. That's the math of being human. Here's something I love about Chuck in this season of life. He didn't park the mission when the spotlight dimmed. He kept supporting what mattered, especially programs like Kickstart Kids, launched in 1990 to give at-risk students the tools martial arts gave him. Respect, discipline, a way to aim your energy at something bigger than your fears. If you've ever seen a teenager's shoulders square and eyes lift after their first belt promotion, you know how life-changing that is. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is hand the next generation a map you had to draw the hard way. Let's pull all the threads together because this isn't just a biography, it's a blueprint. Chuck Norris is not a myth and a meme. He's a man who crawled out of a frightening childhood without becoming the monster he met there. He's a serviceman who found identity in a gym far from home. He's a competitor who lost early and often, but kept showing up until he didn't. He's an actor who turned focus into presence and presence into a career. He's a brother still carrying a hole shaped like Wieland. He's a friend who learned mortality at a hospital bedside with Lee Atwater. He's a father who admitted regret, reached for Dina, and built love out of lost time. He's a husband who traded red carpets for long nights in emergency rooms with Gena O'Kelley, choosing devotion over applause. Now, when you think of him at 85, don't picture the meme. Picture the morning routine slowed down, the stretches gentler, the joints reminding him that time doesn't negotiate. Imagine him walking the ranch paths past the still lakes, remembering the young boy who guarded his mother with shaking hands. The first tournament win, the crackle of a movie set in Rome, a folded flag, a hospital corridor humming under fluorescent lights. All those battles, some loud, some silent, stitched into a single life. And here's the twist ending you probably didn't see coming. The legend of invincibility turns out to be about breaking and then rising. That's the real superpower, not a roundhouse kick, not a one-liner. The choice to stand back up when love and grief knock you flat. The decision to be gentle when you were taught to be afraid. The humility to say, I'm sorry, and the courage to say, I'm staying. So what do we take with us when the credits roll? Maybe it's this. If Chuck Norris taught us anything worth keeping, it's that strength isn't loud, it's loyal. It shows up, it protects, it forgives, it fights the battles that don't trend, like being the calm in a home that once felt like a storm, like raising kids who know kindness matters more than invincibility, like sitting beside a wife whose pain won't listen to bravado and staying anyway. And if you're watching this, thinking about your own fights, the ones nobody sees, let his story be a hand on your shoulder. You don't have to be fearless, just faithful to the next right step. You don't need perfect beginnings to build a noble ending. Remember the vow that 14-year-old Chuck made? Never become the man who spreads fear? Maybe our version is simpler. Never become the pain that made you. Be the shield you needed. Be the steady one in a shaky room. Before we wrap, let's give the flowers while he can still smell them. Chuck Norris didn't just entertain us, he gave us a model. Turn hurt into discipline, discipline into service, and service into love. That's a legacy no meme can hold. If this story hit home, if Chuck's journey made you pause, made you think of someone you love, or reminded you to fight a little longer, drop a like so more folks find it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the people behind the legend. Share a memory of your favorite Chuck Norris moment in the comments. Movie, show, life lesson, anything. And hey, to the quiet fighters out there, we see you. Keep going.